The NBA has officially rejected Warner Brothers Discovery's proposal to match the terms of its Amazon deal. And as expected, all hell has broken loose. For those out of the loop, WBD was set to lose its NBA rights after the 2025 season and after 4 decades of broadcasting NBA games. I mean, their relationship goes back to the 80s. The league has signed rights deals recently with multiple partners, one of whom was Amazon, the others being Disney and NBC Universal. WBD had until this past week to match the $1.8 billion deal that they made with Amazon, and they did so. And the NBA has rejected their offer. It took, I think, less than 2 days, and they have rejected their offer. They say that it did not match the terms of the Amazon offer, and therefore they have entered into a long-term arrangement with Amazon. And this isn't even for their main package. You know, Amazon is getting like their third-string media rights deal. It's also streaming only, whereas the WBD offer, it would have aired the games on TNT and streamed them on Max. A spokesperson for Warner Brothers Discovery said, "We have matched the Amazon offer as we have a contractual right to do, and do not believe the NBA can reject it. We think they have grossly misinterpreted our contractual rights with respect to the 2025-2026 season and beyond, and we will take appropriate action. We look forward, however, to another great season of the NBA on TNT and Max, including our iconic Inside the NBA." Within hours, Warner Brothers Discovery filed a 27-page complaint in New York State Supreme Court. Among the things that they are asking for is an injunction that would prevent the NBA rights from moving to Amazon if these issues are not resolved well in advance of the 2025-2026 season. And it also details the, quote, irreparable harm that it will suffer if it loses the NBA. It would not be hard for the NBA to point to comments that David Zaslav himself, the head of Warner Brothers Discovery, made back in May when he talked about how robust their other sports offerings are. Should they lose the NBA, right? They're going to be okay, he said. He talked about the NHL. He talked about NASCAR, college football rights, playoff baseball games they have, March Madness. I mean, he made a pretty compelling case for why they would be okay if they lose the NBA. And here's the kicker. Here's something that a lot of people aren't even talking about. The NBA got permission from TNT and ESPN to even bring Amazon into the exclusive negotiating window in the first place. Not only that, it's been reported that bringing Amazon into the negotiations was TNT's idea. It was TNT Sports that initiated the idea of even bringing them in, which is wild to me. And the only reason I can think that they would even do that is they weren't so much worried about losing out to Amazon, you know, at the beginning of all this. They were worried maybe about NBC. So they didn't see Amazon as a threat. And we see what happened here. I mean, that's like Kevin Sullivan booking his own divorce by putting his wife together on TV with Chris Benoit and telling them to keep kayfabe and travel together and share a hotel room on the road, which is true, by the way. I mean, what did you think was going to end up happening? The more I think about that, the more I think that he did that on purpose just to get out of the marriage, because he could not have been that stupid. I mean, I know there's some fucking stupid wrestlers out there, but he could not have been that stupid. As far as how this might affect the AEW negotiations, I cannot see this being anything other than a positive. It may have no effect one way or the other, but losing the NBA is certainly not going to be a negative when it comes to these AEW talks. The only thing that could really hurt them, and this is not as far-fetched as you may think, although even if it did happen, I can't imagine it happens this quickly, but it was Chris Novak on the website Awful Announcing. He pitched this doom and gloom kind of worst case scenario where David Zaslav gets booted out of his position for losing the NBA. They've lost confidence in him and they get rid of him. Because it's that embarrassing of a loss if they lose the NBA. If that happens, you would have somebody new leading Warner Brothers Discovery. We don't know who that person would be. And that person may not be somebody that Tony Khan has the kind of relationship with that he has with David Zaslav. Or it may not be somebody who likes wrestling or sees the value in carrying AEW. Right? It could be, it's like the Jamie Kellner thing all over again with Turner that people talk about with the death of WCW. It certainly cannot be ruled out. I think that's unlikely. It sounds like a deal is going to be done long before that ever happens, if that ever happens. But it can't be ruled out, given how Zaslav looks coming out of this whole fiasco. And that's what this is. This is a fucking fiasco. On that note, we have gotten conflicting reports over the past week about the AEW media rights deal. BJ Bethel first reported last week that AEW and Warner Brothers Discovery had reached an agreement, in principle, to keep AEW on the Turner networks for the next several years. That deal would add AEW content to the Max streaming service, including pay-per-views, and that the exclusive negotiating window between the two sides had expired on July 21st. So that's what he reported last week. Tony Khan made a comment the other day that made it sound like they are still in the exclusive negotiating window. And that's important because if they wanted to shop the product around somewhere else, and I don't think they do, but if Tony wanted to, that means he still can't, as long as they're in that window. Austin Karp, who is a writer for the Sports Business Journal, says that his sources are telling him that a deal is not yet done, and that Tony Khan has to be paying attention to all of these NBA rights stories. And if Warner Brothers Discovery is going to be out of the NBA game, that would leave them with more cash to spend elsewhere, and that could be why maybe Tony has not accepted anything that may have been offered to him up to this point. Maybe wisely he wanted to see how things would shake out with the NBA stuff to try to get maximum value for AEW. So what we know is that Tony Khan and David Zaslav were set to have a face-to-face meeting in Paris. Since the Olympics are going on there, they're going to be there having a meeting. Fast forward to Thursday, and Tony Khan's Death Before Dishonor media call. He was asked about that SE Scoops report and had this to say. We're still having great talks, still in conversation, so I think that would be premature to say that we are all set and done because that's still what we're working on. So having great talks, including today. I've had some great meetings with the executive team, Mr. Zaslav, Kathleen Finch, Bruce Campbell. No, it's not that Bruce Campbell. And the great people at Warner Brothers Discovery that put a lot of time in, and had a lot of great meetings and everything's great, by the way. You notice that? He loves that word. It's still something that we are all working on together. I think it would be premature to say that for sure, but also important to note that it's a very good ongoing dialogue that we are having. Okay, so he said very good there. Finally, I was just looking for something other than great. He said very good, so that's nice. He has other words he can use. Then he threw in an accusation against WWE. He said, I don't usually do this, but since Brandon brought it up and asked, I had a major member of the wrestling media mention to me yesterday that WWE is, I wonder who that wrestling media person was. 3 guesses who it was. But he says this person told him the WWE is telling people, and I don't know why WWE is telling people about our media rights deal. I don't really know why it's any of their business. I don't really understand why WWE PR calls people and talks about my business. WWE PR is telling people that the deal is done and that the deal is done at the same level that it was going to be our previous deal. That's not the case. I don't know why WWE PR and why major wrestling media members who are very credible and have never lied to me I don't know why they're telling people that. It's none of their business. I think WWE PR really gets involved in a lot of things they should not get involved in, and I can tell you that is very untrue, because when we make a deal for AEW, it is going to be a great deal with a big increase over what we have been doing. We are in a really good position. We have been doing great business here despite what they are trying to do to us. I am sure that WWE's PR department does things to fuck with AEW. I go back to the whole Pizzagate thing with Nick Gage. And supposedly the stories about them calling around with that story. Oh, you'll never believe what they did in trying to, piss off the AEW sponsors. And I absolutely believe that something happened there. The Fast Nationals every single week that WWE loves to share with certain individuals, including Alfred the Cheeseman. Right? Except for the weeks where the Rampage or the Collision numbers are actually up. Then the Fast Nationals are conspicuously absent on social media. They don't get reported on. It's petty, and it's not like WWE hasn't been doing stuff like this for years. They did petty things to WCW. Eric Bischoff did petty shit back to them. This sort of thing has been happening for decades. But that's the most declarative statement yet by Tony Khan, that not only are they going to get a new deal done with Warner Brothers Discovery, but it's going to be for a big increase. When they signed their first deal, it was set to be for $175 million over 4 years, which works out to be just shy of $45 million a year. That was before Rampage or Collision debuted. Now I think it might be $70 million a year that they get. I said at the beginning of the year they would renew for double what they were getting right now for at least 3 years. Okay, and that's the low end of what I think they're going to end up doing. I could see a 3 to 5 year deal. But all the people who still think because the ratings are down, which they are, that, oh, they're not going to renew, or they're going to get exactly what they're getting now, they're not going to get a big increase, and Tony Khan, he's going to have to just settle for whatever they offer him. Tony Khan would never agree to that. If that was their final offer, then he would be shopping the shows around somewhere else. He needs this increase to be able to sustain their business. It's very important that he gets a healthy increase, and I believe that he will. And all of these people saying otherwise are going to look mighty stupid. And with all this talk about Warner Brothers Discovery and rights deals, in the Death Before Dishonor post-show scrum Friday night, Tony Khan talked about Ring of Honor and the potential for more integration, not less integration, between AEW and ROH. This is what he said. I recognize that AEW is at the very top of pro wrestling. The ROH brand could frankly benefit from even more association. I don't think it's out of the question to say, or sacrilegious to say, I think it would only help grow the ROH brand if I were to license it or sub-license if it were AEW ROH. I don't think that's a crazy thing or a sacrilegious thing or bad. I think it would be good for everybody. People would see more of the connectivity that exists between the promotions and what we're going for. It's not crazy at all to think that Ring of Honor could be televised in the Warner Brothers Discovery family. Would Ring of Honor, frankly, have a lot more value as AEW Ring of Honor? Yeah, probably. I think that I've come to that realization as far as the presentation. That might mean a more cohesive absorption of the promotion into the fabric of what we are already doing, but not in a way that would affect things. This is on the heels of a recent report from Fightful that Ring of Honor is set to receive more care and attention going forward, with plans for dedicated tapings where they can record multiple shows in a single day, as opposed to taping weekly before or after Dynamite and Collision. It's not a coincidence that he made that comment about ROH possibly finding a TV presence on one of the Warner Brothers Discovery channels, and then immediately followed that up by saying that the brand may have more value as AEW Ring of Honor. That was not a misstatement on his part, that it came one right after the other. That tells me, if I'm reading between the lines here, that tells me that if Ring of Honor is part of their ongoing discussions with Warner, which he claims they are, they may be open to a Ring of Honor show only if it is branded as AEW. And I said it last week, AEW cannot just take Rampage if they wanted to right now and hand it off to Ring of Honor. But Rampage as a Ring of Honor show always made sense to me if they, could convince the powers that be of the same thing. AEW Ring of Honor or AEW presents Ring of Honor would not be all that different from the way the WWE lists NXT. If you ever look at your TV listings, it's listed as WWE NXT. It's smart, but I still think there needs to be a separation in the way the product is presented. It can't just be another AEW show. The way it looks, the way it feels, the talent they use, but for maybe a few names that he would want on the show so that they have some stars on there. And when Scott D'Amore is free, he needs to pick that phone up and have a conversation with him, because I think having someone else as the figurehead for that brand creatively, not just on screen, but even behind the scenes from a creative point of view, is the biggest step that he could take to really giving it that separation that it needs.